Hi, everyone. Welcome back to Mind What Matters. Thank you so much for coming back. Last week, we left off with part one of a conversation with my bestie, the founder of Mind What Matters, and the reason that this whole thing exists in the first place, Elizabeth Humphreys. And where we had left off, I had just asked her a really, really big question that she
You
did an
think?
excellent job with.
You think?
Yeah, describe your emotional journey of caregiving for your mother over the last 13 years. It's just a simple little, a softball, if you will, which you nailed. And we left off, though, with you saying, but there is hope, essentially. There are tools that you learn along the way. And so I think especially when you're somebody who is caregiving for a loved one with Alzheimer's or dementia, right? You and I have both learned a lot of tools. And I think people are like, what are they, right? That's a
Yeah.
question I get asked a lot. Like, what are the tools? What do I do? How do I care for my loved one? So I just want to start. We're just going to pick up there. What are some of the tools that you learned along the way that you give to caregivers now to make their caregiving journey just a little bit easier?
That's actually, you brought up a good point yesterday when you said, I get these calls all the time from people who are having experiences with their loved one
I
where
just
they're
got
not
another this morning. Yeah.
too serious. I mean, it's like
Hmm.
daily for me almost. And I
Same.
think that, you know, when you and I went through it, we were so on our own and we were so much
Yeah.
younger than when it
Yeah.
normally happens. So, like, we didn't have anybody to call and we didn't have anybody to
Mhm.
really ask questions to. The first person that I finally got to ask questions to were the people who I was talking to on this podcast. That's when I finally was like, "Oh, wow. You mean
Oh, yeah.
your
And
experience
it's a
is
big
not
reason
true?"
why you started it. Yeah.
It's the only reason. I started this podcast way back in 2019. This was before the pandemic because I didn't release it until well after because we sort of got interrupted and then the world shut down. It took a while to do production and editing and whatever, but like I was in search of other people who were going through this experience because
Hmm.
I felt so lost and because I didn't know my head from my ass, frankly. I had found myself in this place of just burnout and didn't know I didn't understand the feelings that I was feeling towards my parent, and I'll get
Mm.
into that in just a second, but I felt like there was just something wrong with me in the way that I was handling her disease, and that's for 2 reasons, right? Like, I had this older sibling who was seemingly, like, so together about it and so unaffected, and so I would constantly compare myself, to him, like, "Why can't I be more like that? Why does every time I'm with her, I feel like crying? Why does every time, we have a holiday together or a family event together, am I in the back of my mind, I'm holding back tears because I'm not sure if it's the last time we're gonna do it, you know?" I didn't
Mm.
understand grief. I didn't understand, like, here's a great example. We were just cooking gumbo together one day, and I was stirring the roux, and I didn't know that, like, how you're supposed to do it, like, how dark the roux is supposed to get. Some people like it a dark
Yeah.
roux, like, all the way black. Other people like it, more in the middle, more caramely. It's just how you like your gumbo. So my mom pops up off the couch, and she's like, "Well, let me come look at it." And there she is stirring it on the stove, and I caught my husband out of the corner of my eye videoing it.
Mm.
And I immediately started to cry because I realized why he was doing that, to
Yeah,
capture
of
the moment.
course. Of course.
And it was so overwhelming for me that, like, I just couldn't handle it, It's like I could not be in the moment of just enjoying cooking with my mother. I was just so overcome with grief, and her illness had progressed to the point where there was such little left of her personality that was really her, um that it felt suffocating, and I felt suffocated all the time. I tell people this, like, it felt like I was walking around and listeners, you can't see this, but, like, I felt like somebody had their hands around my neck, and I was walking through life like that, and I was trying to
Hmm.
experience joy like that, and I was trying to have birthday parties and, school events and all these things in the midst.
Show up for your kids.
of having these, like, everyday heartbreaks, and I just felt lost because the self-shame that I put on top of myself for feeling that way is seriously what contributed, I think, to my feelings of burnout, and we can talk about burnout and what that is in a minute, but when I got on this podcast and I found I'll never forget this, I'm gonna forget her last name right now, no, I'm not, Lauren Dykowitz. Lauren was one of the OG Instagram, like, Alzheimer's caregivers who, like, posted a bunch of stuff about her journey, and at the like, when I first found her, I was sort of like, "Ooh, gosh, you're really putting a lot out there about your personal life," and that wasn't as common on Instagram back then, it was more just, like, the happy pictures and, whatever, like,
Look
events.
where I traveled. Look
Yeah,
where I'm
yeah,
yeah.
like, well, it was like Facebook had upgraded, right? But
Yeah.
this girl was, like, really laying it all out there, and I was just overcome with how honest she was, and I couldn't wait to interview her, and, in the midst of us talking, I told her how I had felt about, in the last 6 months to year that every time I had been with my mom, I sort of almost felt like these feelings of disgust when I was around her, like, I wouldn't wanna touch her. I don't even know if I've told you this, like, when she would hug me or we'd go in for at the
Yeah.
peace in church and she'd go
Yeah.
to kiss me, I would sort of, like, pull back and recoil,
Mhm.
wouldn't wanna hold her hand. um, I did not understand that, and I couldn't understand why the days that I did have to myself, because Gaines, my youngest, was, like, 3 and going to preschool then, and I had finally a little
Mhm.
bit of time to myself. Like, why did I not wanna spend every waking moment with her? Why was
Mhm.
I like, "Yeah, I can't do lunch today," or, "How about I drop you off early instead of staying, for 2 hours past dinner like you used to do?" Like, I wanted away from her, and I could not reconcile that in my brain with what a
Mhm.
daughter should be wanting from
Mhm.
her mother with a terminal illness. Like, the math
Mhm.
wasn't mathing. And Lauren, in one sentence, changed everything for me. She said, "Why would you be surprised that the thing that's hurting you that you would wanna pull away from? Would you wanna keep putting your hand, like, back on a hot stove and keep touching it even though it hurts?"
Mhm.
She's like,
Mhm.
"No, it makes total sense." And she's like, "And when you argue with her and when you fight with her about wanting something to be right or needing her to remember, that has nothing to do with you, like, essentially needing her to know that something happened on a certain day. It's that if in the world, if she can agree with you that something happened when it really happened, then the reality is not shifting. Then she's not
Yeah.
changing. So you're trying hard to hold on to who she is, while at the same time your body's trying to protect you from
Mhm.
from the hurt that it is experiencing." And
Mhm.
I should actually go back and listen to that episode so I can speak to it more eloquently than I just did, but her
Or maybe
words.
we also repost it so that other
Yeah,
people can
yes.
also
We
yeah.
totally need to, like, her wisdom was just like somebody had taken, like, a chisel and cracked open my brain, and it just was like, like, I could not
Yeah.
believe one little sentence like that could shift my mindset so incredibly. And that was the
Mhm.
beginning, right? Of like learning all this new stuff and all this new knowledge. And at that point, I was like insatiable for it, right? Like once I had gotten like a bite off of this apple, it was like, give me every single apple there is in the tree. I need to know more.
Yeah.
And so I just
Yep.
started chasing it, wherever I could find it. And in all of these various guests and all these original, like really the OG Instagram caregivers, um, they just sort of gave me these bits of wisdom that then I began slowly using with her, and it really did change everything. So here's a
Good.
small one. This is something that everyone struggles with, and this is so basic, but oftentimes we want to correct our loved one. When they're wrong or when they've forgotten something, we say to them, "Don't you remember? I just told you that." Or, "Dad, I just told you that like 5 minutes ago. Gosh, how many times do I have to tell you this?" And even though we know that they have a terminal disease that is affecting their brain, we still say these things, right? And we get
Mhm.
frustrated. It helped me tremendously when I learned that memories are formed in the prefrontal cortex, the front part of your brain, right? But they
Mhm.
have to make their way to the back of your brain to be able to be stored. Now, I'm not a doctor, so I'm not going to get into like the neuroscience of all of it and how neuropathways or, neurons carry information. But what I do know is that when you tell somebody with Alzheimer's something and expect them to remember, it is like expecting you to start speaking Egyptian in 15 minutes of learning. It can't happen because the memory never forms its way, or it never gets all the way to the back of the head. So I always equate it to this. Pretend you are opening a door and that you're going to throw a chair down this like endless tunnel of black that never lands. That chair never hits anything. That is what a new memory or any new piece of information is like for somebody with Alzheimer's. It never
Mhm.
lands. So they're not forgetting anything. The memory was never formed for them in the first place. So when you ask them, and I used to do this, I used to quiz my mom to like see where
My
she was in the disease.
my
I
mom
would be like,
would
"What'd
do
you have
this
for
to my
breakfast?"
dad
You
all the
know,
time. Not quiz
"Tell
him,
me
but
what
she would be like,
Tell me what you
yeah,
had for lunch today, mom." Or,
yeah,
"What did you do last night?" Like, oh my god, if I could go back to that prior self, I would slap her. Actually, I wouldn't, because I have tremendous love and respect for her now. It's taken me a long time to get there, but for a long time, I wanted to slap
yeah.
her. So, let's just avoid that, 5 years of shame spiral and self-hate hatred, and just never make those mistakes in the first place. Don't argue with your loved one. Just don't do it.
Mm-mm.
It's not worth it. It hurts them, it hurts you, it hurts you the most. They will forget that you ever had the fight by the next day, but you will remember that you had that argument for the rest of your life, and you will find yourself in therapy
Yeah.
5 years later going, "God, I wish I hadn't done that. Why didn't I make the most of that time?" So don't argue with them.
Mhm.
Try and have patience for the fact that when they do forget, it's not a memory that they've forgotten. It just was never formed. So tell them as many times as they ask. Also, another major helpful tidbit is oftentimes when people with dementia or Alzheimer's keep asking the same question over and over, they're not necessarily doing it because they've forgotten. They're doing it because they're anxious. They don't know what's going to
Yeah.
happen next. They don't know what to expect. So that's actually like an anxious, nervous behavior that starts happening. So the best thing that you can do in those moments is to sort of to diffuse the situation is to distract them. That would be a good time, for instance, like, let's just pretend this is me and my mom. When do we have to go pick up the kids again? When do we have to go pick up the kids again? And if it keeps going like every 3 minutes, makes you crazy, especially when you
Mhm.
throw hormones on, especially if it's that time of the month and you throw more hormones on, like 2 seconds away from like spontaneously erupting. Because it can be so frustrating. I'm not trying to sit here on some
And also,
big
your kid
counter.
didn't sleep the
Not.
night before.
Yes,
You
all
were
the
up and
things.
down with it. Like
Give
there's
yourself
a
grace.
million. Yeah,
But
yeah,
but that's a
exactly.
good time to say to your parent, "Hey, you know what? I really need some help polishing this silver right now." Or, "Look at these necklaces that I got tangled in my jewelry box. Mom, hey, could you get up and come help me do this?" And then you spend the next X minutes between now and when you have to go pick up your kids, so they'll stop asking, doing an activity. Whether
Yeah.
it's together or even if it's just something for them to work on alone. I mean, you gotta get creative about this stuff. It's almost like I really hate the people who, like, refer to Alzheimer's patients as, like, another kid to take care of, but you do have to kind of put yourself in the mindset of the parent of a, you know, very young school-age child and sort
Yeah.
of figure out ways to keep them engaged and active, and one of the best ways to do that is find something they liked to do before. This is insane, it does not hit for me, but my mother loved to iron. I would rather have my teeth filed than iron, but she loved to do it. So guess what I did? Set up an ironing board in my living room, and man, every single night of the week, my family was using the nicest linens we had so I could throw them in the washer, and the next day, she could spend the afternoon ironing. Like, it brought her peace. It's insane. Like, it
Yeah.
makes no sense, logical sense to you and I, but if you can find tasks that keep them busy and in something that they already felt comfortable doing
Mhm.
or even liked to do, it
Mhm.
so many of the bad behaviors that drive people crazy can be eliminated. Um, gosh, I'm sure there's so many. I mean, there's so many of these things. Do you have something more specific, like a particular thing that's irritating or like a particular problem with Alzheimer's that you can think of that
No,
I
I
can be
think
like, "Oh, here's a solution."
that's a really big one for people. I mean, I was really lucky that I intuitively knew how to do that with my dad, and I don't know if it was because I was in the midst of raising small children or that I had a background in sociology and psychology.
Both, I bet.
Um, mhm.
You
Um,
also you also came from an orb. I'm not sure that Nikki's human today. Just not sure she is. So, you
but
are
that was
superhuman.
Thank you. Thank you. But that was a big one, that I think when I look around and everybody struggles with that because it will make you crazy, the constant questions. And my dad, it's like, look at that beautiful orange sky. Yeah, the sky's not orange, but I would be like, oh my God, you're right, Dad. That is the most beautiful orange sky I've ever
Beautiful.
seen. Or like he would eat breakfast and then he would be like, is it time for lunch? And I'd be like, you know what? Almost time for lunch. Actually, could you help me again? Could you help me go out? We need to pick up some of these pine cones or pecans. We have pecans from the pecan trees. And that was something that he used to love to do. Being outside, picking up the pecans, working in the yards. Like, we just need to get this done. And then as soon as we can get this done, we can go to lunch. And it was just the
Mm,
constant kind of deflection of those things because, I don't know if anybody listens to Dr. Becky. I found Dr. Becky and it's when she was first beginning and before her whole ever she blew up on Instagram. She's a brilliant doctor and her whole philosophy on raising children is that they are born and they are good inside and kids are good inside, and essentially it's really about reparenting yourself
mhm.
as you are parenting your kids.
Yep.
What did
Same
you not
analogy.
yeah, what did you not get that you need to reparent yourself and give to yourself in this moment with your child? And so I was doing a lot of Dr. Becky work, 2019 going into
Mm,
2020, and I did her classes and stuff. And I also think that helped me with my dad because I was like, "Oh, it is basically like even with your children, you know, it's that compassionate caregiving, right? Of like,
mhm.
oh yeah, they're 5 years old. They don't know how to do this.
Yep.
And when we come at them, what is wrong with you? Why can't you figure this out? Why can't you tie your shoes? Why can't you? Like, it just beats them down
Right,
and makes them feel horrible about themselves, right? But that's maybe
right.
what our parents did to us. So, so I was in the middle of like doing these classes and learning through her. And then I was like, oh, it's kind of similar with my dad. He can't help that he has this illness. If he
Mhm.
was a cancer patient, would you be saying to your loved one who has cancer that is so sick they can't get off their medical bed and they need help, would you be looking at them and going, "I just don't understand why you can't just get up and walk to the bathroom yourself?"
Right,
You would never.
right.
But
But
because it's all
but
internal.
if you're listening to this too, do not beat yourself up if that's what
Well,
you've been.
and that's what I was going to say next. I think, you know, you said something that I wanted to come back to, which is like not just touching base on like what you were feeling and your emotion, but a family member close to you, you know, what he was feeling and how he was choosing to carry it. And I want that to be kind of like a door that's opened right now to talk about the fact that something that we touched base on in the first episode, which is not shaming yourself.
Mhm.
This is the hardest of the hard. When I look back on my years when I was in the trenches of caregiving, I mean, I don't know how I got through that.
Mhm.
I really don't know how I got through that. It is the hardest thing I've ever done in my life. And those moments when I didn't get it right, or I was so human, or I made a mistake, or I was like on the ground in my bathroom in a puddle of my own tears, couldn't get myself up. Like these moments I look back on and I with such compassion
Mhm.
because I'm like, wow, what I was carrying and how I was trying to manage and what I was doing, and you as well. And for every caregiver out there, we don't know until we know,
Yeah, that
right? And
that's it.
so you have to give yourself so much mercy and grace because if you don't, it will only get harder. And what I
That's right.
mean by that is this. the buildup of, and we can see it societally, not just in caregiving. We see it with people in our lives where, say, you're in conflict with someone and they wronged you, but instead of sitting with like, oh man, I messed up. I messed up. That wasn't okay that I said that. I need to go and repair that. And that's what the Dr. Becky taught me. It was really the miracle and the power of repair with my
Mhm.
children, in relationships, in relationship with myself. So I
Mhm.
was learning all of that while I was caregiving, of the power of repair. And I was repairing with myself daily, repairing with my older child daily, repairing with my husband, in these moments when I was overwhelmed. I couldn't handle, I couldn't whatever. And then I would go back to repair. Hey, honey, to my husband, I'm so sorry I snapped on you. You don't deserve that. You were literally just asking me a question about what we were doing with Hudson after school. You didn't deserve that. I'm sorry. I am in overwhelm. I didn't sleep last night, and I'm just having a really hard day. What that does is diffuses conflict. It softens his heart. It
Mhm.
softens your heart and allows you to figure something out together. Because when you don't have that, when you shame yourself and you don't allow yourself to get out of the spiral, when you're so hard on yourself, you begin to harden your own heart,
Mhm.
which keeps people at a distance. It takes you away from your own humanity, and it makes the entire situation so much more
So much
hard
worse. Mhm.
and it's so much worse. So
Yep.
that is such an important thing. I want to talk specifically about how we manage that dynamic, especially when you're inside a family dynamic where you're both all trying to figure out how to caregive, and one person is carrying it one way and the other person is carrying it another way. Because that's really hard. And I experienced that in my own family. But let's talk about specifically for you what that was like and how eventually you kind of came out of that. Or I would say, kind of had to just move past it because you had to take care of your mom.
Oh boy.
You know? Oh
Um,
boy, I know.
yeah.
I know it's
Wow.
hard, but we all are dealing with it. Like, my mother
Gosh.
gave care one way, I gave care another way, my sister, my brother, and there was a lot of feelings internally wrapped up in that. Like, why can't you do this? Or why, like, or why am I being so hard on you for not doing this?
Yeah.
It was a
Well,
lot.
okay. I'm going to back up for 1 second, and then I'm going to ask you a question to sort of help me get into that.
Oh,
Um,
yeah. Okay.
One other major tip. This was something I messed up on along the way quite a bit. In my hope to sort of keep my mom engaged in the land of the living, I was constantly pushing her to do things. Like, just come
Mm.
with us to do this. Go do this. Can't you just keep going to church? Go to the lesser busy service in the evenings. Come on, go to this movie with us. I didn't recognize that when she told me no, when my mother told me no, that was her own personal boundary of saying, I don't feel comfortable doing this anymore. And I invaded that boundary by not accepting that. I needed her to keep fighting. And I saw that as her
Mm.
sort of giving up. And that brought a lot of just turmoil in between us because I was constantly forcing her to go outside of her comfort zone. Even when I had to move her into a care home, I was like, come on, you can get yourself downstairs. Like, you can do this. Come on. Like, mom, you need to do
Mm.
this. And
Mm.
she couldn't, she like physically, literally couldn't. And so I think understanding that like you have got to meet your loved one in their own reality and accept where they are has to become like number one. So if all of a sudden you're
Oof.
used to going to, Outback on Friday nights for dinner with your family and with your loved one, and all of a sudden they stop saying like, or they start saying, I don't want to go anymore, that's your cue. Or if you're at restaurants and your loved one shuts down and gets really quiet, that's your cue that they're not comfortable anymore. Same thing with travel. Okay, guys, like
Oh,
stop taking the
travel
trip.
is.
If they fall apart on a trip and their memory gets way worse, like the longer the disease goes on and the longer it progresses, the smaller their world has to get. And you have to
Mhm.
let that happen. It actually goes against what's best for them as the patient if you
Yeah.
don't. If you keep
Yeah.
resisting that, like, "Nope, dad, we're gonna go to this Cubs game, on Saturday." Well,
Oof.
that's loud. It's loud, it's noisy, it's overwhelming, it's overstimulating, it's probably hot
So
or
many
cold,
people.
whatever. There's sensory problems that there are sensory problems that develop at the end, or even in the middle of this disease that make going to events like that really challenging, and so I could go on all day about this. You've struck
Frontal
a chord,
cortex.
but that's really
It's
about
all frontal cortex stuff. It's like with kids, you see it in kids with
yeah, sensory stuff.
like with my son with sensory stuff. My oldest was
Yeah.
his proprioceptor vestibular system, his sensory stuff. He had to be in OT for many years, which
Mhm.
really was helpful to him. But for years, I mean, I will never forget taking him to an Ed Sheeran concert for his birthday because Ed Sheeran was his favorite artist at the time. And we got these incredible seats
This
and we
happened to
got
us with
there.
Advent, with Taylor Swift.
And
Remember this story?
yeah, and 2 songs in, he was having a full-blown panic attack. I removed him to go
Mhm.
out and get some popcorn and sit out there where it was a little quiet, and he wanted to try again. We came back in, and I just look over, another song went in, I just look over, and he's literally clinging to me
Mm,
and tears coming, and I just looked at my husband, I was like, "We gotta
we're
go.
going. Yep.
We gotta go." And we walk out, and he's crying, "I'm so sorry." And I was like, "Buddy, no."
Don't
And
be sorry.
actually, that's the concert. We were on our way to Ed Sheeran, and I was on the phone with you the entire way because this was at the end. This was like at the end of your mother's journey,
Oh gosh, don't look at me.
and you and I were on the phone because you had been with her all day and you were there and you were kind of filling me in about the day and all the things. I'll never forget it. I remember exactly where we were. We pulled into the thing, and I
God
think a
bless your
few.
heart. You should have told me that's what you were dealing with Hudson. I would have been
No,
like,
well, no,
"Hi."
we were in a good place on the way there because we thought like this was going to be
Oh,
such a great experience. We had no idea. Um, but my point, it goes back to, it's that frontal cortex in them when they're young that hasn't fully
mhm.
matured and formed yet, but it's the frontal cortex in them as they're older that begins to go,
Yep.
and and it's underdeveloped, it's not mature anymore, they can't handle it.
Yeah.
So if you
Yeah.
if you can understand the mechanics or the medical aspect of it, it also is a little bit easier for you in those moments to go, okay,
I get it.
this is
Yeah.
what's happening. Yeah.
Okay. So I'm going to need some help from you how to answer
Yeah.
this one. And, guys, this is sticky because my brother and I really got into it on my mother and, candidly don't have a good relationship now. And jury's out if we ever will again, to be honest. It's one of the saddest things, honestly, about what happened
Yeah.
with my um but I don't know how to attack that question. I need you to give me a harder prompt on
Yeah.
because like I said yesterday, the divide started happening when we didn't even agree that there was something wrong with her,
Yeah.
and then ultimately we found out, my brother was actually great about it. Um we were moving to Nashville. We were in the middle of moving cities, and my mom was just completely falling apart. I had wanted her to move here with us, and I think that would have lessened how quickly she started unraveling, but I guess, they had had conversations behind my back that I didn't know about at the time. I only found out, honestly, not too long ago, that he had really told her, "Hey, let Liz and Hunter go live their life. They need some time apart from you," because she had been living in Memphis with us as, a big part of our lives for, what, 3 years? No, longer than that. Yeah, no, I guess about 4 years. And, he essentially told her, "Liz needs a break. You should come and, you should either move to Naples where your brother and sister-in-law live, or you should move to Durham where we live, but give them a break." I didn't know that at the time. And it's so funny because looking back on it, I had so much guilt. I thought that I never asked her to come with us. And,
Hmm.
lo and behold, I find out years later I'd written emails and emails to her, just, basically begging, and her saying, "No, you and Hunter need you need your space, and I do too, and this is gonna be fine, it'll
Hmm.
be another new chapter." But, you know, ultimately she did try and move to Naples, and that was a disaster, and she went, like, back and forth, I don't know, must have been 3 different times between Memphis and Naples, like, not being able to make up her mind. I mean, she blew the my freaking mother-in-law was just like, didn't know what to do 'cause she blew in like a tornado one day and was like, "Okay, well, I'm moving back to Memphis even if Liz and Hunter aren't here." Stayed at my mother-in-law's house. They went like literally shopping for houses, employed a real estate agent, did all the things. And then one morning just walked out and my mother-in-law was having coffee and my mom just announced, I think I'm just going back to Naples. And, she was like, "What? What is going on?" And at that point, my brother was great. He grabbed the reins and was like, "Mom, you need to come to Durham. Something's wrong with you. We don't know what, but you're hitting rock bottom. We need to get to the bottom of it." So ultimately, she did. She got a diagnosis. She lived there for about 2 years. I had this like lovely little grace period where she was not in, my life on an everyday basis. But that was really hard in a lot of other ways because she declined so fast as soon as she moved to Durham, and when she got off the airplane the first time she came to visit me, she was a shell of the person who had left me on my front doorsteps when I hugged her goodbye in Memphis. I mean, I'm talking like she was sobbing. She had no will to live. She was just like going on and on about how much she missed her days with me and the kids and da 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 da. I mean, it was awful, absolutely awful.
Mhm.
And if this book ever gets out into the world, I describe like in vivid detail how bad it was. Um, and I think that would really resonate for a lot of like you caregivers that are sort of the long distance caregiver. It's hard. It's hard when you're not the one that's there every day seeing it. And all of a sudden it's been a few months and then you see this sharp decline. You're like, oh my God.
Yeah.
And I really had to learn this like new way of connecting with my mom at that point because the disease had really taken over. And it was about learning a new way of connecting with her in different ways. But everything had sort of changed by that point. And then
Mhm.
bizarrely, my brother moved to Nashville and he moved here. And obviously that meant we got my mom back, but they literally moved here like, I don't know, maybe a year, not quite a year before my 3rd child was born. And so
Mhm.
my mom arrived in August and Gaines was born at the end of December. So I was sort of like, oh, and then, oh, by the way, they decided after 6 months of living here that they didn't want to live here and then moved back to North Carolina. So I was sort of tasked all of the sudden with like, okay, congratulations, here's your new baby. And also, here's your mom full time again, which felt good in a lot of ways because the guilt that I had been carrying over not quote unquote caring
Mhm.
for her went away.
Mhm.
But then I was tasked again with this just heaviness of like, okay, 3 kids,
Mhm.
Alzheimer's, off to the races, and it was a lot. And things were constantly shifting. And my brother was in charge of my mom's finances. And so there was always this like push and pull over like, okay, well, you can't have that much money to buy that kind of house. So you can only do this house. So I'm like dragging 3 kids around, looking at condos all over Nashville. And we'd buy her one, and then she wouldn't like it after 6 months. And this one didn't have a place to plant flowers, and this one didn't have that. And so there I go again. And so it was just a lot, and I think my brother didn't necessarily understand the, like, weight of what the everyday was, and I think my error was I would make these calls to him in chaos, kind of thinking,
Mm.
"Okay, we're on the same page emotionally about our mom having Alzheimer's," and I'd emote and I'd share with him, like, the grief that I was experiencing or the frustration I was experiencing, and he took it as, "Well, there's shoot, now your mental health is going down the toilet, and you're gonna turn into her, and I have to step in and fix this." Do you know what I
Yeah.
mean? And, like, I think a lot of older brothers take that approach of, like, "Well, I just have to jump into protection mode," and for him, it was almost like, "Well, screw mom, I have to make sure you're okay." And not necessarily screw mom, but, like, you know what I'm saying,
Yeah.
like, his
Yeah.
priority was me, my priority was mom, and we got very sideways on that really quickly, and I think what he never understood was I didn't need someone to protect me. I was a grown woman, I could do that for myself. What I needed was a partner in, like,
Yeah.
the grief and
Yeah.
just being a sibling of a child, like, of a parent with the disease.
Yeah.
And then just, as the disease progressed and as things got worse, and as my life got even heavier and crazier as kids got older, and I had been carrying it for what, like 4 years by the time COVID hit, it
Mhm.
was like, I need help, like, I am drowning, and then something crazy happened, which was my grandmother died, who was, like, my same as your grandmother. I mean, there's so many things about us that are so similar, it's eerie, but I was, like, crazy close to her, and when she died, I was devastated, and I got off the plane at the funeral, and my brother looked at me and was just like, "You look terrible, like, I'm worried about you," and basically, he and my dad were sort of like, "You need to consider this, like, why don't you let mom go live with Bennett?" She's clearly like, "This is taking its toll on you, you've done this for 4 years, you did it for 3 years before that in Memphis, like, you're exhausted, take a break." And for the first time ever, I said, "No, thank you."
Mhm.
And but I thought about it in the back of my mind. I was like, "Well, maybe." But then also, how could I do that to her again? How could I do that to my kids again? And I couldn't reconcile that. I was like, "There's no way. I can't do it." And then maybe 3 months later, 4 months later, I'm still grieving, like, big time, my grandmother. Well, I'm grieving 2 things, right? I'm grieving my mom and what that whole situation is, and I'm grieving that my grandmother died. And my mom walks into my house one day, and she's like, "Well, I think I just hit someone at Walgreens." And this is the story where she thought she had committed vehicular manslaughter and, like, walked into my house, just announced it, and I was like, "What the shit is like, what?" Like,
Yeah.
okay, we've gone through a lot of crazy things, but, like, I'm sorry, what? And so there I am, like, reviewing, camera footage with the Walgreens, manager, and to see what had actually happened, and it wasn't. She had just parked next to somebody who had the same car as, the car next to hers, and so they got confused because there was a dent in their car, and they, like, attacked my mom for it. Poor thing did nothing. But by that point, my cortisol was just I mean, I was looking at the grill of her car to, like, check for blood and hair. I mean, I was like, "What is happening to my life right now?" Like, I threw my
Yeah.
kids with, like, the next door neighbor, like, sent her home. I mean, basically just was like, "Enough." Like, I don't know what this is doing to my body, and at that point, all I needed was about 2 months off, and I needed some rest, I needed some counseling, and I would have been just fine. But what ended up happening was I let some people that I cared about, including my husband, I mean, like, my dad, my husband, my brother, they were all like, "You should let her come live here. It's what's best for everyone, especially you, and you just need to kinda, like." It was like an intervention they had almost with me,
Mhm.
and I gave in, even though I knew that wasn't what was the right thing. And I think from that moment on is when just things between my brother and I got more challenging, right? Because then all of a sudden, she's there, I'm feeling horrible, the whole world shuts down, right? Like, I am giving myself just lashing after lashing internally with, like, mental anguish over how did you let this happen? And, it wasn't just a break. I mean, he made it very clear
Yeah.
that if, like, she were to come there, it's like a one-way ticket. I'm not even gonna let her come visit because that's not what's best for her. And so it felt so final and
Mhm.
so horrific considering I had been taking care of her for so many years. And then I'd go visit her, and she just had declined so much, and it was the pandemic and all the things, but she just every time I went, it was worse and worse, and the time that she was spending alone, like and I get it, like, guys are not daughters, and when she was living here, she was at my house, like, almost 24/7, and she was there she'd go over there for, like, twice a week for dinner, maybe? I mean, it just wasn't enough engagement for her all the time, and, um she was just lonely, and every time she would talk to me, she would just express how lonely she was, and then I started seeing her, like, nutrition get worse and worse, and I was worried, and so was he, like, that she was getting to a place where she shouldn't be living alone, and on a visit, that I was there, he basically just took me to a nursing home that was like, "Okay, this is what I've picked out, and, my wife's gonna take her to lunch with my kids, and the moving van's gonna come, and then after lunch and shopping, like, we're gonna take her here." And I walked through this place, and I just remember 'cause, like, people were still wearing masks, and I, like, kept pulling it up over my face because I was just like in tears. I was an absolute, like, I was hysterical. I was like, there's no way. Like, you cannot. She was sitting on the floor playing Legos with Gaines this morning, and she's been staying in the hotel with me all week. And we've been laughing together, and, like, it was the best I'd seen her in a while after I'd spent a few days with her, like, feeding her, 3 meals a day and whatever, and, I just was like, "She's not ready for this, and she's definitely not ready for this place, and I can't do this." And I think he was frustrated with me, at that point, and was sort of like, "Well, if it's not this, it's on you, because this is what's happening if she's here." And I was like, "Okay, well, then it's on me. Like, literally right now, I'll take her home with me right now." And I felt this insane sense of relief after that happened, because I just was like, "Okay, like, all is right in the world again." Um, but then his sort of caveat to that is, "Okay, well, if she's not in a nursing home here, she has to be in one there." And so she lived with me for a few months, and it was, like, glorious and wonderful, not a few, but a couple, and it was a great period of time. I could, like, cry thinking about it. I just wish it could have, like, lasted longer. My dad had just moved to Nashville. My parents have been divorced, like, basically all my life since I was 9, and everybody was together, and it was so joyful and so happy. And then we moved her in, and it was within 24 hours. Like, she was never the same. She was never the same
Yeah.
after that. And,
Yeah.
it was just a constant battle between, he had her power of attorney, but was not here, and he was making medical decisions, and I was here, and I was seeing her every day, kind of knowing what she needed, and we just butted heads constantly over it.
Yeah.
And I think the more I tried to, like, assert myself and say, "Well, I'm right," the angrier it made him, and the more he fought against me, and it became this terrible, beautiful disaster. And,
Yeah.
um he was not present at the end of my mom's life. He was not present at her funeral. I mean, it was tragic. There's no other word for it. I don't think that there is, like, necessarily, like, you'll probably disagree with this being, like, my best friend, but, like, who knows who's to blame, right? Like, in any situation like this in families where, like, there's blame. I'm sure I did so much wrong. I'm sure I never should have called him bawling, crying, being like, "Oh my god, you'll never forget, never believe what she did
I
today,"
I
you know?
actually I actually will stop you there because that's no, you should be able to do that with siblings. You should be able to do a lot of things, right? Does it make it your reality in that moment with whatever? Because I hear this a lot with families and how they deal with loved ones who are going through neurodegenerative illnesses, right? And people are on two different pages about how that care is supposed to look like.
Mhm.
I mean, my husband and I, we went through that with our son, right? And I would have arguments, and we can talk about this when you interview me, where I would be like, then you can leave. Then you can leave. This is my child. I am a lion. And let me tell you right now, I'm going to protect this child with every fiber of my being. And if you're not going to support it, you can get the hell out. Like, that's the place that I had gotten to. So that's why I want to talk about it, because it's like when you're caregiving, all of our stuff, all of it comes up and out. So
Mhm.
you're losing somebody. You're trying to, like, manage it. Most of the time you're also raising kids, or you've got a husband, you've got this, you've got a job, your full-time job you're trying to manage. And every single thing that you have never dealt with or processed or in your life, and these family dynamics and
All
your own
comes
dynamic with yourself, it all comes up, it
back.
comes out. And the next thing you know, it is like you have had a hurricane come through your entire life,
Yep.
and then you're left with the pieces of it. So, like, you know, I love that you said, who's to blame? Yeah, I'm your best friend. You're my ride or die, of course. But also, I will say it's not about blame. What I have learned in retrospect, it's like, it is not about blame, because it's pointless at some
Right.
point.
You're right. You're
It
totally
just
right.
is. it's like, who did this and who didn't do that and who did that. I think even right now, we look at what's happening in our world and we're so quick to want to assign blame to something and skip past the humanity of what is happening. Someone is suffering. Can we just be with that?
Right.
Can we just be with that?
But I don't
Whether
think
it's,
can. That's the point. Like, I
and
think that's
that's the point. Some people cannot.
can't.
And so, in those moments when you are in a relationship with somebody and you begin to see very, very quickly that you can sit inside suffering
Mhm.
and they cannot. Instead of forcing them to be something that they are not willing to be, and I think you and I have had to learn this the hard way,
Mhm.
it's bless and release.
Yeah. Yeah.
I am just going to have to, because I'm going to clean up my own backyard. What can I do? What is in my control today? This is a literal tool that I have to use every single day of my life. It's ACA. If for those of you who can't afford therapy, or do both, if you can afford a therapist, get a therapist. But ACA, which is Adult Children of Alcoholics and Dysfunctional Families. So ACA is this recovery group and a recovery program where it costs basically nothing, and you learn the steps of having to deal with dysfunctional relationships,
So
including
good.
your own dysfunctional relationship with yourself, right?
Yeah.
Because it's
Mhm.
you first. Grant me the serenity to accept the people I cannot change, and give me the wisdom to understand that that person might be me.
Yep.
And
Yep.
so it is okay, I can't change that person. They're in complete resistance to my suffering, to the suffering of this person that we're trying to take care of, and to all of it. They're in resistance, they're in denial, and I can't bring them to it. So instead, what I have to do is make sure my own backyard is cleaned up and that I am doing what I can today for my child, for my mom, for my father, for whatever. I am just doing what I can today to put one foot in front of the other, right? And it is
Mhm.
like, it is literally a tool that I use every single day, even in 2025. I go, okay, I can't bring that person to this. So this is what I have to do, because it's going to make you crazy trying to change that person.
Right. Well, you can't. You cannot
You
change the other
can't.
person.
And so, like, assigning blame to anything is just, it
But
is a fool's errand.
I couldn't understand, and, like, caregivers, for whoever is listening to this, if you have, like, the majority of the responsibility and, like, let's say a sibling comes into town or maybe even an aunt or an uncle or whatever, like, this would always blow my mind, like, my brother would not wanna spend that much time there with her, and I'd be like, "Well, you're only here for 2 days, like, don't you wanna spend all day?" And he'd be like, "No, like, this visit, it's not even for her, like, she won't even remember it anyways, like, let's just go on and do the next thing," or, he'd wanna go out to dinner
And
with
it
me and
breaks
Hunter
your
or
heart.
whatever, but, like, I mean, at the most, he'd spend an hour or 2, and, like, or maybe 3, maybe, bring an orchid, sit with her a little bit, but, like, what I understand now and I didn't then is that that is all some people are capable of, and
There you go.
it really truly does you no benefit to
Mm-mm.
sit there and, like, get into it or, or cause conflict over
That's
that
it.
because that's just what that person's willing to give or can give.
Yep.
Um, you know, clearly my brother had his own stuff with my mom. I don't know. I could not fathom not being present for the death of a parent, like either one. Like they could have beaten the crap out of me and like dragged me behind a car, but like it's your parent, like, oh my God, I'm going to be there no matter what. But for whatever the reason, for whatever stuff he was carrying, that wasn't an option for him. And
Yeah.
at the time, when you're in that circumstance and tensions are already so high and your
Yeah.
emotions are so high and you're grieving and you're scared, end of
Yeah.
life and end of life decisions and all of this talk about terminal disease, nothing brings forth dysfunction more than fear. Nothing.
Yep.
Because at the root of every person's worst act is fear. That's why they're doing whatever it is bad that they're
Correct.
doing, is they are coming
Correct.
from a place of fear.
And
And
trauma often too. It's
yeah,
in trauma
trauma
and
and their own
induces
stuff.
fear. Yeah.
Um, but I think that the more heart that you can bring and the
That's it.
more understanding you can bring, like, if there was anything I could go back and redo, I mean, look, like I said at the beginning of this, who knows where we're gonna be? A lot more happened than just what I'm saying. I mean, I was lied about.
And also,
I was tried
yes.
I was slandered. I mean, it was bad. It got
Yeah, it got really bad,
but I
you know when
still
people are
even
like, "No regrets?" I'm like, "How could you have no regrets? I have so many regrets."
I know. But it's like I even though all of that was done, I wish I
Yeah.
had just had the guts in the midst of it to be like, "Whoa, time out. Like, what the F are you doing? Why did you tell these lies? Why did you do this? Like, this is not okay. We're siblings. Let's work it out." But I was literally dealing with someone who was dying, and every single day, the reality was shifting. She was declining so fast at the end that it was
Mm.
just like a hurricane wrapping around my brain every day, and me just doing my best is like I was Jim Cantor, just trying to be like, "Good God, woman, like, let's just hold on and get to the next day and, like, stay
Yeah.
alive," you know? I wasn't
Yeah.
working on, like, sibling conflict. Are you kidding me?
Because you can't.
Not
It's
in the
so hard to
moment.
do it in the
No.
midst of it. In the midst of it, if you have not had that, like, that's another thing. I went to school for sociology and psychology. I started therapy and recovery for eating disorders at 22 years old. Like, I had decades of work
Mhm.
before this hit me. My God, and am I so grateful. And even with the decades of work on myself, in
Still hard.
programs, education on it, it was still so hard, especially navigating the dynamic with me and my husband. Like, it was so hard because even if you've been in recovery, 9 times out of 10, the people around you that
Have
you were
not.
doing this thing with are not. And so,
Right.
like, woo, that's so hard. So,
Also,
like,
reframe that phrase recovery, because I think our listeners are probably thinking you mean alcohol recovery or drug.
no, no, no.
You're just
I mean
talking
recovery. I'm talking about disordered eating recovery, but
Mhm.
recovery work is recovery work, whether it's disordered eating, whether it is
Trauma.
alcoholism, drug addiction, trauma. Trauma is recovery work. You experienced abuses, in your life or as a child or a teenager or young adult, and then you go into recovery for that, right? That's
Mhm.
all recovery work. And I cannot recommend it. I honestly like the fact that we do not give it to children in college or in
Caregiving.
high school to begin the conversation of being in some recovery work is like beyond me, because there's nothing that is needed more in our
Mhm.
society than understanding tools of how to deal with hard things in life.
Yeah.
Um, I think this is very helpful for people because there is no one, I have not talked to one single person that has not navigated a caregiving situation and not had a complicated dynamic with somebody they loved inside of it. And
Mhm.
so thank you for talking about it, being willing to talk about it. And, that's why I'm so open about it. I mean, I love my husband so much. I will, he's like I always say, he's 95% amazing, which, like, dude, got 5% that we really have to work on. Come on, we are winning. But like, that was so hard. And the fact that we were able to stay married during that is a miracle, but it's also a testament to not just love, but like the work that I had to do on myself in order to be able to get to a place to understand that, like, I cannot control him. I cannot bring him to the work, the recovery work that we need to do together. I can't do that. All I can do is clean up my own backyard, put one foot in front of the other, and accept him for exactly how he is in this moment, but proceed accordingly for myself,
Mhm.
which looked like, some days I know something's going on with his heart. I know something's not okay. Him, you're in PTSD. I was dismissed. I was denied. I was treated like I was a crazy person until I pushed and I said, I don't give a shit about how crazy you think I am or anyone. That is the moment when I ceased to care about being liked by anyone. Thank God. What a gift. I don't care if you like me. I don't.
It's the
I'm
truth.
going to
It
do
really
the
is.
right. I'm going to do the right thing.
It
And
is a
what the
gift.
right thing to do was, in that moment, check his heart again. And my God, am I so glad, because he had a giant aneurysm in his pulmonary artery, and he had to go into emergency heart surgery, and it was his second one. But me not caring and just saying, well, I'm going to take care of my own backyard. I have a job to do right now. And I'm not going to be
Is what
mad
they
at
did.
you about it. I'm not going to be resentful. I'm just going to do what I know is the right thing to do here and proceed forward. And I saved my son's life. And so when I say to people, like, you really, caregiving and these experiences, if you allow it, it will change you fundamentally on such a beautiful core way, because at the end of the day, we shouldn't be worried about whether people like us or not if it
Mm-mm.
means doing the right
The right
thing.
thing. And that's ultimately, like, where I got to, right? Like,
Yeah, you did. And that's where I wanted to bring it up, because that's where
I
you got
think
to. You're like, I have to do the right thing.
exactly. And I do believe that, you know, I'm trying to think how to say this. I think so much of the time, you question yourself, like,
Oh
"Am
my
I doing the right
gosh.
thing?" You know?
Yeah.
But
Or
one of the
enough. Am I doing enough?
right. But I think one of the gifts that comes with caregiving when you do it long enough, and really the biggest gift is it actually teaches you to trust yourself more than you maybe
Mm,
ever would have in the first place. Because it does
yes.
call on that deeper part of your consciousness that's like, your ethics, your virtues, your values, like the things that really make you who you are what it all boils down to. And, when you're taking care, it's different. It's different with cancer. It's different with, some other diseases. But like, if you are taking care of somebody who truly cannot advocate for themselves and you love them, man, it's a different ballgame. It is just a different ballgame because at the end of the day, you do know what they need. You do know what's right because you've been with them, right? Like all the time. You've been with them for
Yeah.
months, years, and whatever, and you know them. And so you do have to fight. You have to fight against doctors. You have to fight against nurses. You have to fight against your own siblings. God, that sucked. Like, it
Totally.
really sucked. Do I wish that that
Totally.
had never happened? Yes. Do I wish? I mean, even at the end, despite all the things and all the lies that had been said about me, all I wanted was my brother at the end, which was so ironic. It made no
Yeah.
sense. I was like weeping over my mom one day, and one of my best friends, Courtney, here, like, came and picked me up and was like, "You want me to call Bennett? Like, do you want me to call him for you right now?" And I was like, "Yes, but no," but, like, he has to come on his own. If he wants to come, that has to be from
Yeah.
him. But, like, despite it all, I think what's so amazing is that no matter how much hardship there can be between siblings or spouses or whatever it is in these very tense situations, love is always there. It's still there for me. I will always love him so much. That doesn't mean
Oh,
that I'm gonna
yes.
subject myself to, like, abusive behaviors, but, like, I will always love him. And
Mm-hmm.
I think too, distance really plays a big part in these things. Like, had he lived in Nashville and had no other choice but to, like, walk in that room one day, I have no doubt that, like, we probably would have hugged and, like, worked our shit out, you know what I mean? But, like,
Yeah.
that didn't happen. I didn't get that, and it didn't, and here we are 2 years later, still where we
Yeah.
are. But, like, distance hurts these things, pride hurts these things,
Yeah.
people not
Blame,
being willing to.
trying to assign blame. Yeah.
But that's in everything, right? Like,
Yeah.
how many of us or how many are there walking around out there who really wanna be like, "Oh, man, I messed up that one real bad. Take it." Very few, Like, you and I are, like, weird creatures that, like, somehow I'm usually the first to be like, "Well, I did that," like,
Me
I'm an idiot.
too. It's
But,
so
like,
liberating. You guys
not a lot of people
just
are.
once you start, and that's why I said, as an adult, go find Dr. Becky. Seriously. I'm
And
serious.
admit
Go
you're
find
wrong
Dr.
all the
Becky. Go find Dr. Becky. Even if you have grown children that are out of the house, go to her Instagram page. Start listening
Her
to
voice
what
does
she
get a little
talks about.
annoying. It gets a little
I
annoying
kn
after a
I
while.
kn maybe for you,
I'm sorry,
but
Dr.
listen,
Vic.
or go read her book, Good Inside, listen to it on tape, or go do some of her seminars. I'm telling you, the liberation that comes when you can go, "Oh gosh, I messed up. Okay,
Mhm.
I messed up. I'm human."
How often do I
And
do
then,
that with you? Like, once a month, probably?
yeah, I probably do that once a day with somebody in my life, to be
Mhm.
honest. Like, and often
Kids,
it's my
it's your kid.
children
Yep.
where like they drive me absolutely insane. Hudson woke up this morning and ate 2 cookies. When nobody was in the kitchen, he got himself up, he snuck into the kitchen, he ate 2 cookies before
Standard and
eating breakfast, and I'm just
standard.
like, what are you doing?"
What
Like,
kind of cookies?
oh, they're good. They're crumble cookies. They were really good. So at least you picked
Well,
good ones.
you're the
But
asshole who bought crumble cookies.
but like just begin normalizing, I messed up, I'm sorry. And just see what
It
it does to every single relationship in your life, but especially your relationship with yourself. And then you'll find that not only do you find grace and mercy for yourself, you begin to find grace and mercy for everyone else. It
Mhm.
doesn't mean for everyone that you can be intimately involved in their lives. But
Right.
what it does liberate you from is carrying resentment and anger, even when you can't be an intimate part of somebody's life, right? Because maybe it's not safe, maybe it's not healthy, maybe it's not whatever, it's what it needs to be. But if you can learn to give grace and mercy to yourself, then you can go, man, that makes me really sad. And
Yeah.
also, there's nothing I can do about it.
Mhm.
And so I am just going to send love and I am going to, pray or whatever it is over that person, over that family, over that situation until maybe there's a moment when I know that there's something else to do.
Right.
I want to close. I could talk to you. So again, like you guys, like you have the like OG over here.
We've
So
got a
like
little
I could
bit.
ask you and I can
We've got a little bit more. We've got 10
I
more
know, but
minutes.
this question is going to it's going to take a minute. But I only because this is a big one for caregivers. And this was something that I know I struggled so much with. And I know that you do too. I don't anymore. 2025 really kicked this out of me in like such a major way. And I kind of broke through it. But my God, it was like, did I really have to wait till I got my 40s to like figure this out?
Are you about to dive into my need to have people like me and not offend?
No.
Okay. Well, if we
Asking
get over there.
how hard it is to ask for help.
Oh, geez. Whoa.
So, because what I know to be true is that when I began my caregiving journey, friends rallied around me and they were like, write down, write it down, the list of things that we can do for you.
That was
And then I
nice.
remember, and they're like, we're going to give you 2 weeks. And then we're going to come over and we're going to all be together and you can give us a list and we will carry them out. And they got there and there was not one thing written down on that list because I did not know how to ask for help. That was part one. The other part was I was in complete overwhelm. And when we're in overwhelm, the actual definition of overwhelm, we don't know what we need.
Mhm.
We don't even know where to begin. So
That's
there's
the
2
truth.
parts, right? So this 2-part question is, if you could go back in time,
I
right?
feel so formal. Oh my god. That's amazing. Okay, go.
And ask yourself, like, and ask for help, right? What would that help have looked like? Number one. And number two, how can people in community with caregivers, like your friend is caregiving for a loved one, you keep asking them, what can I do? How can I help? They're like, oh, I don't know, or I'll let you know, or whatever we do, because I'll let you know. Thank you so much. That was
Right.
my
Same.
thing.
Yep.
Because I was in overwhelm.
Mhm.
I've thought a lot about this for myself, but for you, what can those people just do without even having to ask? What can they do? And then if you could go back in time, what moments or where are the areas that you would have asked for help for people that are in the trenches right now?
What I will say is, like, when you're
Good luck.
in I know, God, suck it, Nikki DeLoach. You're, like, really making me, put on the old thinking cap here, and I'm wearing my coaching hat, and,
You
you
need a
guys can't
whistle.
see us right now. We have matching aloe sweatsuits on, and we look like the 2 most idiotic, Dumb and Dumber people right now, but my baseball cap matches my aloe suit, and
Mine does not.
my husband's been making fun of me and calling me coach all morning, so he's asking what this is. Okay, what I will say is uh how you're managing things tends to spill over in the most unexpected places. For example, I had just gotten a call that my mom had wet her pants on a walk around Centennial. It hit me like a bullet straight in the stomach. I mean, I was like,
Mm,
"What?" Nobody's even told me that she's been having accidents. This is like thank God it was last year of her life. Um, for those of you who did not know my mother, we are talking about the most like Southern
brilliant.
lady, just so, I've never heard my mother curse. She wore khaki shorts and polo shirts to garden, okay? Like, it
Pearls.
just yes. I mean, there was nothing about living life, pooping and peeing in your pants that she could have handled. So, anyway, thankfully, it didn't last that long for her. But it really did just knock the wind out of me, and, this caregiver's calling me saying, "I need you to go to the grocery store and get her some Depends." And I'm already, like, 5 steps ahead of going, "How in the shit am I gonna get these on her?" In the first place. Like, she's gonna take
Oh,
one look at the box of Depends when I walk in her room,
and
and
say
she's gonna, like,
no.
throw a lamp at me, Like, what are we even
Yeah,
talking here?
yeah.
So there I am, I'm at the grocery store. First of all, I'm shocked at how expensive they are. So I'm so sorry to all of you who are having to deal with that right now and are already having financial trouble because that's just not something you should have to pay for. And also, side note, I think in stub states, you can get that covered. So do your due diligence on that. I did not know that. Um, However, there I am standing in aisle 4 of Kroger staring at these, Depends of all various shapes and sizes and other adult undergarments, and I'm just, like, frozen, right? Like, totally frozen. I see some other mom I know from, like, preschool, and she's, like, doing the, "Hi, how are you?" Whatever, and I'm, like, having to put 7 pieces of duct tape over my mouth to not be like, "Well, I'm great, Sally. I'm picking out pants for my mom to shit in. How are you? How's little Timmy?" I mean, it's coming totally unhinged, right? And,
I live for an unhinged moment, by the way. Like,
so
absolutely live for it now.
well, good. I'm glad you're best friends with me. You'll get a hell of a lot of them. I go back and forth in this aisle probably 2 dozen times. I don't know, but I'm just like, finally, I grab some. I take them over there. I leave them at the front desk. I'm such a chicken shit. I can't even take them upstairs, right? So I leave there feeling about, 36 inches tall and just like a total failure that I didn't have the nerve to like go up there and help her into them and like, have the discussion and all the things that we would have had to have 17 more times. Um, and I left. I had about 30 minutes before I had to go pick up my kids, and I went to this like smoothie shop that's right around the corner from my house, and I ran into 2 pretty good friends from when my kids were in the early preschool days. And I hadn't seen them in forever, but it was like something about seeing like an old friend. The
Mm,
minute I saw their faces, it was kind of like when I got off the plane that time when I came to see you, and it was just like tears the minute I saw you. Like
yeah.
for me, it's always been like that. If I see somebody who's, like, really important to me or that has been a
You
long-term
feel
person
safe with.
and I'm already emotional, like, it's gonna come out. And so I see them and they're like, "Hey, Liz, how are you?" And I just stood there and, like, they knew within a half second that I was just, like, gonna lose it. And I did. I just started bawling. And they were like,
Mm,
"Oh my god. Like, are you okay? What happened? Did somebody die?" And I'm like, "No, but she's about to." I mean, like,
yeah.
totally told them everything. I'm just blubbering on, and then the very first thing I did was apologize. I apologized and I was like, "I am so sorry." I'm like drying up my tears. I'm like, "This is so embarrassing. I'm so sorry. I'm just this is humiliating. I don't know what to say." And they were looking at me with like equal parts love and understanding and also just like so much sympathy. And so what I wish I could do is go back to every time I had a moment like that and let the people help. Don't apologize for your emotional state.
Mm-mm.
Don't apologize for overreacting or for being sad or just, oversharing. And really use that as an opportunity to be like, hey, humans that care about me, like help me. I'm suffering right now. Like this is so
That's
hard. I
good.
don't know how to do
Yeah.
this. I'm really, really struggling with how to get through it and I need some support. And
Yeah.
beyond that, on the emotional side, and the same goes for my husband, oh, by the way. I was the worst. He will still tell you. Like, it's a weird thing between us. When I'm really upset and he tries to hug me, the first thing I do is push him away. Always. It's like still that way. Like he has to break through it and be like, nope, nope, we're gonna hug. We're gonna hug. I'm gonna do this. Because and I think a lot of people who've suffered with like some severe childhood like trauma, their first reaction is to protect themselves when they're
Totally.
feeling upset and they're feeling scared and sad. And so you go inward and you're like, "Nope, I just want me." And I've had to really work against that and and I think of a lot of caregivers who are resistant to help, that might be you. I don't know. You might be listening to this being like, I had a great childhood. I love all the help. I love hugs. That was not me. I was very resistant to any help. And I was
Mm-hmm.
really self conscious about emoting in front of others about how I was handling the experience.
Mm-hmm.
It got better as the years went on, but especially in the beginning, middle stages, like it really wasn't until like year 13 that I got okay with that. Um, so I would go back and I would let all of those people just help. When you find yourself in those moments where you're sad and you're vulnerable and you're with somebody, lean on them. Give yourself
Yeah.
that opportunity to like have someone else you know what? Give the other person
There you go.
the advantage and the experience in their own humanity of being able
Yes.
to help you. Don't rob that from
Yes.
them. And I
Yes.
think I'm only now just seeing that side of things, but like let the other person's humanity rise and let them
Yeah.
do maybe a part of the God's work that they're being called to do in this
Mm-hmm.
world. Like don't put
Mm-hmm.
a stop to that. And then
Mm-hmm.
actual just day-to-day side, look, people are busy, they're gonna offer to do things. Some are gonna do it, others aren't, you kind of you intrinsically know those friends who are gonna show up and who are gonna get the jobs done for you that you can't do, whether you've had a baby, there's been a death in the family, your marriage is falling apart, whatever. Um, you know who those people are. Call on them. Ask them for help. Say, "Hey, I'm having a particularly rough afternoon with my loved one. Can you please go get my kids at school, feed them a snack, let them play with your kids, and give me a couple extra of hours?" That
There
would
you
have been
go.
huge. So ask for help with your kids, especially if you're in the sandwich generation. Ask for help on a weekend. People work, but like not on Saturdays and Sundays. Say, hey, um, like I had a friend who was amazing and would offer to like literally take my mom, muffins and coffee and go sit with her on a morning when I couldn't. Um,
Beautiful.
Sometimes when I, really couldn't. Like I think that's a great way to ask for help because sometimes you get tired of always being the person in charge and checking in and doing it every day. So like ask your friends to like that's not hard for anybody, by the way. If you can't afford caregivers and you can't afford help, first of all, you should be applying for a grant on www.mindwhatmatters.org. But if you can't, ask a friend to come sit with your parent for 3 hours so you and your husband can go have dinner, or so that you can
Yeah.
go to a book club or go get your nails done. I don't know any friend in the world, if they're worth, a damn, that won't be like, "Sure." And if they're not sure how to handle your loved one, because I think a lot of people don't offer with this disease in particular, out of fear for not knowing how to handle the person, say, "Hey, it's really not that hard, like, I can give you some tips and things to do, and if it really gets hard, I'll come right home." So
Yeah.
give them a little bit of training, Tell them what
Yeah.
they're in for, tell them what to expect. Don't just, like, have them walk in and be like, "Take your keys," and be like, "Sayonara, I'll see you in a couple of hours." Make sure that the people who you care about are getting a full working knowledge of what they're walking into, Like, anytime I had a friend that would come with me up to see my mom, I was
You have to
always very
prime.
strict, like, "Hey, You just need to know what you're about to see. This is not something you're used to seeing, and it can be very upsetting,
Yep.
and you should be prepared for it. So I don't know, does
Yeah.
that answer your question?
It does answer my question. And I would say in the converse, right, of like people who are out there that have a loved one that's a caregiver and they keep asking them, hey, what can I do? What can I do? And that person is basically saying, um, you know what? I'll let you know. I'll let you know,
Let
um,
them know. You gotta let them know.
just literally like, yes, you have to let them know. But if you're like, I want to do something, they don't know how to ask for help right now. Honestly, show up at the house and just
Mhm.
place some food on their doorstep with
Love
a
the show
note
up
and then
house.
text them and say, I left this on your doorstep. Love you. Just like, so wait, they have dinner that night. Or like, hey, don't cook tomorrow night. I'm ordering food and sending it to your house. And if that's expensive, right, then just show up and say, hey, I just wanted to come by for a visit. And then while you're there and sitting there and you're with that loved one, you're like, you know what? Why don't you and your husband go to dinner? I did that with my friend whose child was in the hospital so many times. I literally flew in from
Mhm.
filming and I landed, I put my mask on. I went immediately to Children's Hospital Los Angeles because they had been there the whole time I was filming and out of town. They had been in the hospital with their child. And I drove straight to the hospital. I went in, I looked at the wife and the husband, and I said, get out of here and go get food. I've got
Mhm.
this. And like sat by the baby's bedside for, 3 or 4 hours so they could go get food and just
Amazing.
together to have a moment of normalcy and come back. And I get that you can't trust every friend to do that, right? Especially when you're in a CTICU situation. But those are just little things that can get ideas started of like what you can do. There's somebody at our school whose husband's going through cancer treatment. That
Mm.
entire school, they've had food delivered. They've had, massages gifted. They've had like the amount of outpouring of just people going, we're just going to do.
Hmm.
We're going to do because you're in overwhelm and you can't tell us what you need. So we're just going to just do. I guarantee you it will be welcomed
Yeah.
with so much gratitude.
Sometimes all another caregiver wants is to be seen for what
Oh,
they're
yes.
doing and acknowledged. I wanna close us out
Great.
today. Do you have another one? Do you have anything else pressing,
Mm.
burning
Oh, I have
out
like a
there?
million questions, but that was my last one for this session.
Um, wait, wait, hang on, I have the most unhinged thing to say. Wait, what is it? I know I do, I douche, do you? What's that commercial from the
I don't
'90s?
know.
I douche to you? Oh my gosh. I'm gonna forget it. Hang on. Summer's Eve douche. Summer's Eve
Oh,
douche. I don't douche
gosh.
to you. Remember that question? Sorry.
No.
And my brain works in very mysterious ways. This is what
Intrusive
it's to
thoughts.
have this is what it's like to have ADHD, kids. Um,
Yes.
okay,
Yes.
so I just wanted to share this because we got it from a caregiver, that we gave a grant to just recently, and
Mm.
I think this really shows what caregivers are really looking for, and if you are one right now and this resonates, I hope it resonates with you. And I want you to know that Mind What Matters and Nikki and I see you in this way because we've both been through this and we know what you're doing and we know how hard it is from every angle. She says, I just want you to know that the check went through today. Thank you. She'd had some trouble with them cashing it. You have no clue how much of a blessing this is. When I received it in the mail, it was the first time ever in my life I felt like someone cared and has seen my efforts. I sat there in a parking lot and I cried. I couldn't help it. I had given up. My struggles are so real, and I had been through so much this year, and dad being sick and now needing to be watched over constantly and kept up with is the hardest job I have ever done in my life. It has literally put my own needs on hold by putting his needs first. No one has ever helped me with anything, and I had lost hope. I thought I was going to lose everything because of not being able to work. And she goes on and like says some other things. But she says, I'm one person. I can't do it all. I can't hold a job and take care of my dad. So my mind was running overtime, trying to just figure out how to do it all. And you guys made me smile for the first time in a year. And I didn't feel like that was possible. There was no hope. God bless you guys and whoever has seen my name and thought that I deserved some help. And I hope because it was the greatest thing that could have happened to me. I went and got insurance on my truck. I got new lock that dad can't open, some dog food and groceries. So I don't have to worry about my dogs or me or my dad, and I can be there for all of them. So thank you from the bottom of my heart. You did more than just give me financial help. You gave me hope. And I just think that that at the end of the day is what it's all about, is giving somebody hope that they can keep going, that they can get through one of the hardest things that there is. And Nikki, I cannot wait to tear into you with questions about Bennett. I hope you guys don't get sick of us, but maybe we'll have a break. We'll do figure out somebody cool to interview. Then we'll go into Nikki's story. But, caregiving for your aging parent is hard. Caregiving for a child when you know that death is a possibility and that that's on the table is it's another level. And doing it both at the same time is what, like I said, I think is what makes you superhuman. I'm not sure you did do it on your own. I think you have, metal inside of you somewhere that's connected to something in outer space. It's the only way. I mean, I barely got through my mom. You put one of my children into the middle of it and nope, nope. I don't have that kind of strength. But you do. And you're going to share your wisdom about what that was like with our listeners when we get to you next. And when I, by the grace of God, develop some questions that can adequately prompt you to portray your incredible humanity.
Oh,
And I'm excited for that. And I thank you for being willing to ask me these hard questions. I'm not sure I would have talked about some of these things ever if you hadn't. And it's been cool to kind of look back on it all and sort of think about it. I obviously had to do that when I was writing the book, but it's different. It's different than talking about it
is talking
with
about it
another
is
person and
yeah.
really kind of laying it out there and bearing your soul for what it was really like. It's so hard. It's the hardest of the hard, and it's the most godly work there is, whether you're a caregiver for a child or a parent or a spouse or a sibling or a co-alien, whatever it is. I got it. Summer's Eve douche. I know I douche. Do you? There it is. There it is. We're going to close on that. All right, guys. Till next time.